Hi everyone. So we're going to try this a different way because it seems like Sam is having some difficulty getting going. So hopefully it'll work by having me be the host. And here is Willy. So I am going to accept his request as well. I've accepted both of their requests. Hopefully we have no issue. There's Willy. Let's see if we can get Sam on here. Yay!
We did.
We did it after many attempts. I'm not sure what was going on, Sam, with yours today. Oh no, are we losing her? There she is. Okay.
All right.
This is always why we start a little bit early, Willy, because I don't know, maybe it's Sam and I, but we tend to have technical difficulties every once in a while. Well, welcome. Are you frozen there, Sam, or can you hear us? Looks like she might be frozen, huh?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Oh no.
Can you guys hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now. Yep. It was giving us the spinning wheel of death there for a minute.
I am having technical difficulties, so thanks for taking over, Lyndsey. And sorry, we're starting a few minutes late now, but we're excited to have Willy here and to talk about.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks. Sorry, you were lagging a little bit. It might have just been for me, but yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You guys get started. I'm going to troubleshoot my internet for a second.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, welcome, Willy. And typically we kind of do the standard introductions, but since Sam is having some difficulty, I'll introduce myself and then we can have you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are. And then when Sam can get back on here, we'll have her introduce herself as well. So this is, I keep forgetting like which number now. We have done type 9, type 8, type 7, type 6, and type 5. And today we are on Enneagram Type 4 and sexuality. My name is Lyndsey Fraser. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as a certified sex therapist, an IA accredited professional through Enneagram Egypt. And I have a private practice in South Minneapolis where I specialize in relationships and sexuality utilizing the Enneagram. Do you want to go first, Sam, or should I have Willy try to go ahead and introduce himself? How are things working on your end? Okay. We'll have you go, Willy. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you are one of Sam's oldest friends. I know she was super excited to have you come on here. I was hoping that she could share a little bit about, did I hear that you guys have known each other since preschool? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's a long-standing friendship.
Yeah. We actually, we didn't keep in touch, and I think forgot that we had gone to preschool together, and then met again in high school as sophomores, I think, and we've been friends ever since. So, yeah. Well, yeah, a little bit about me. So,
about yourself.
That's good.
Like who you are, how you identify, a little bit about your Enneagram type, and your stacking.
Yeah. Will do. So, yeah, my name's Willy. I have no licenses at all, but I am an Enneagram 4, and I am social dominant, I believe, followed by sexual and then self-preservation coming in last. I identify as queer, demisexual. So my pronouns, I'll answer to he, him, but he, they are my pronouns. And yeah, I'm a writer. So one of the many like type 4 cliches. That's the profession I chose. Yeah.
Can you guys see and hear me now?
Yes.
We can, yes.
Amazing. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what is going on with the internet over here, but we're doing our best. I'll introduce myself quick since we skipped me. I'm Sam E Greenberg. I'm a sexuality researcher and an Enneagram coach focused on sexuality and relationships. And yeah, I'm so excited to have Willy here, who is my oldest friend. And Willy, we're also super excited because Lyndsey especially has been dying to have another social dominant guest. As she said many times, the sexuality world tends to be biased towards sexual dominance. So we've had a lot of sexual dominant guests, and we had one self-pres. So we're super excited to have a social dominant, male masculine folk, queer folk, and a Enneagram enthusiast, but lay person, because we've had a lot of Enneagram professionals. So we're super excited to have you.
Thank
About the series that we're doing, if you're just tuning in and you haven't been on other episodes, we do Sexy First Friday, the first Friday of every month, on various topics on Enneagram, relationships, and sexuality. And right now, we're doing a type series. Lyndsey, I think you already said we did 9, 8, 7, 6, and 5, and now we're on to 4. So Lyndsey, do you want to do an overview of type 4s and sexuality?
Sure. I would just note too, if you want to see any of those past episodes, they are on our Instagram pages, but we also do have a YouTube page where all those things are posted, and that is Enneagram. It's sexuality, relationships, and the Enneagram. So don't hesitate to like message either one of us if you want access to that. It's a much easier place to see everything. I know it can be hard to find things on our actual pages, but let's talk a little bit about 4s in therapy and sort of what I see. It was interesting when we were getting ready for this. I was like, I've seen mostly sexual 4s come into therapy and a few social 4s, but I have never ever seen a self-preservation 4. So that's been a really interesting perspective. And I think we're going to learn that self-preservation 4s look quite a bit different than the other two. And actually, I think all 3 of these instincts look really different in how they present and how they show up, even though the underlying thing underneath that is all the same for all of them. They look really different, and it can be hard to decipher kind of like which one is which as well. What I see typically in therapy is one, these are going to be your rapport builder people. They really don't like traditional aspects of therapy. They don't really want to have like what's the goal or the plan or where we're going. They want to go with how they feel in the moment when they are in therapy with you, and be able to really, I think in a lot of ways what I've seen is to be able to kind of sit in that suffering with them and be okay with that, because I think a lot of 4s experience other people that is too much, especially your sexual 4s, but I think other 4s will feel that as well, and sort of that just desire of like, I want to go with what I feel in the moment, and us directing the therapy sort of towards that in particular. Sexually, they all have a pretty high sexual drive. And so as Sam has talked about, we have our 3 like tri types, or whatever you want to call them, the 3 types that have high sexual desire, which is the 4, 8, and 7. And I would say that definitely is true, but they're going to be more focused on sensuality and romance and connection despite instinct. Where you may see more of that in your social dominance. For other types, you're going to see that in all 3. When it comes to 4s in particular, they want to have that connection, that rapport building, that sensuality. That actually oftentimes can be more important to them than the sex itself and what's actually happening in the sex itself. And if there isn't that deeper soul connection to the partner, even if it's going to be a one-off encounter, they have to feel some sort of deeper connection to the person to want to be sexual with them. Sexual instinct dominance might get that more quickly with another, though I would say probably your social 4s, and my guess is self-preservation 4s, I haven't seen them, but that it would take longer to build that before they would want to move in to sexual intimacy with partners, and kind of having that ability to know that like, I am connected, it's you and me, we're kind of in that together. So a lot more emotionality is going to kind of go around sexuality as well. So that's a little bit about what I would share as far as 4s in therapy. How about you, Sam? What would the research show us?
Okay, I have a lot to say about 4s in the research. So 4s are a high sexual desire type. That's dyadic or partnered sexual desire, as well as solo sexual desire. 4s are the second highest desire type after 8s. So yes, we use the sexual triad, 8s, 7s, and 4s. 4s are most often second after 8s, and 7s are 4s are high participants in BDSM types of activities and behaviors, again, after only 8s. Interestingly, we see that fours say their partner's pleasure is actually very important to them. Contrary to some of the stereotypes about fours being a more insular or self-referencing type, they say that my partner's pleasure is more important than my own, basically. They're after only twos and nines in that. We have relatively high sexual assertiveness after only eights and sevens. Again, that sexual triad. And then when we get also there a long time, along eights and sevens, they say no, I don't want to be going without sex. When we come to desire cues is where I think it gets really interesting. Fours have very high responsiveness to explicit erotic cues along with eights. Explicit erotic is just like traditionally sexual inputs, like talking dirty, talking about sex, fantasizing, having someone tell you they want you. So those kind of, explicit erotic things, but also really high responsiveness to emotional bonding types of desire cues after only twos. Emotional bonding cues are more of those safety cues around a relationship. So my partner's telling me they want to be with me, about talking about our future. I feel safe. I feel cared for. Fours are super responsive to those. Not at all responsive to romantic implicit cues, which are traditionally romantic things such as candlelight dinner, walk on the beach, those kinds of things. And it seems that fours are not into that because those types of romantic things feel too stilted. They feel like they're not actually true romance. So I'm going to pause there and just check in with Willy. Is like all of these things, how are these resonating for you?
Yeah, the the research, well, as like any four, one of the things I hate is realizing that I'm similar to other people. But a lot of this is resonating with me. I'd say the research definitely bears out in my daily life. I always struggled with how I identified as like a romantic growing up, because exactly what you described, about romantic cues and, love songs, for instance. I felt like, oh, this is all trite. It's all cliche, like, how can this be genuine? That sort of thing. And, yeah, the same is also true for me with what you were describing about sexual cues. I would say, yeah, it's very, that once you build that emotional connection, I would say for me, that's always been, you know, as probably like basic as this feels to say, yeah, like that rings true every single time. All of like the cues that you would expect a four to react to, I've reacted to for sure. Yeah.
And what were you just saying to me the other day about romance? Like things are not Shakespearean enough or something? Can you say that for the people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that I struggle with sometimes is, and that I especially struggled with, back when I was dating, which feels like forever ago, is that like, I don't know, I feel like we, in our modern Western dating culture, we're very kind of reserved a lot of the time with our approach to, shows of affection, displays, of any sort of desire. And I really, I crave like the sort of like, Pride and Prejudice, like, like running to each other through like a misty field, like looking out a window and sighing during a thunderstorm, that kind of thing. Like the kind of displays of affection that are just like unhinged and amorous. I don't know. I feel like there should be more of that in society. We need that. We need that passion.
Perfect. So let's talk quickly about subtype differences because one of the reasons we're super excited to have you is because you're social, and the social instinct is kind of mitigating a lot of the fourness in different cases. So research-wise, it's the sexual fours that are really driving a lot of what I said. If we look at the top five subtypes for each thing, top five subtypes who are responsive to explicit erotic cues, top five desire subtypes. Sexual fours are at the very top or second after sexual 8s and all of these things. They're really the ones that drove the data to have 4s up there. And social isn't in the top 5 subtypes for these things. So the social instinct comes in, and social instinct is more okay with the dry spell, with the sexual dry spell, if the partner is okay and they feel close and bonded. The social 4 is more okay with like a little bit less erratic, patterns of desire. So that's something in the research, self-pres and social 4s are a little bit lower than sexual 4s. Lyndsey, what would you say about subtype differences before we talk to Willy about being social?
I mean, I think it's very much what you're saying. I think that what I do kind of see in sort of the difference between maybe sexual and social 4s is that the sexual 4 is sort of looking for this person, and it's the longing, right? Like, it's very interesting when he's talking about this longing, because that made a lot of sense to me, that romantic longing, sort of that person that will come and save them, right? In a way, right? Like you can't live without me type of an experience that they have, and the intensity that you see with a sexual 4 sort of, and there can be this kind of push and pull with sexual 4s in relationship, because they think they've found that person then shows them the things that make them more human. And they're like, well, wait a minute, if you're not the one, there has to be other one out there. And then there can be sort of this like, pull, push response, then looking for someone else to sort of replace the partner that they're with because they aren't fulfilling that full fantasy for them. And I see sexual 4s do that a little bit more than, say, social 4s. And again, I don't know what self-preservation 4s would do because I have never seen one in my practice. But I would guess that there'd be more internal suffering for a self-preservation 4. Than you might see with the sexual. So like internally looking for that, but maybe not necessarily verbalizing that, where I think a social 4 and definitely a sexual 4 is voicing that.
We also see sexual 4s are the ones who get married multiple times in a lot of cases. And I have seen that with self-preservation 4s as well, to a lesser degree. And social 4 is the least. It seems like social 4s are keyed into the fact that getting married a lot of times is looked down on by society. So they're kind of a little more measured with those kinds of things. But Willy, let's talk about the social instinct. So based on what you know and what we've been talking about so far, how do you think the social instinct is playing into sexuality and relationships and romance for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the big ways it plays in for me is, in a way that relates to my demisexuality as well. With any kind of relationship, whether it's platonic or romantic, but especially romantic and sexual. I have always been a little slow to start. Like I need to get to know the person. I may not exhibit a lot of interest until I know them and feel that deep emotional connection, like you were talking about, Lyndsey. We'll be talking casually for about a month or two, and then I'll realize I'm actually all about this person. That's when it finally kicks in. And yeah, I think people in the past have been confused by that, and especially as Sam knows, I've dated a lot in my past of sexual 4s, and that could cause a lot of friction. But being very attuned to the other person's social cues have definitely, for me, that's the most intimate part of the getting to know someone process. And that's where that connection and the eventual sexual desire comes from.
Perfect. So you're both social dominant. So I'll just say as a comparison that for me as a sexual dominant, I don't need to get to know someone to be attracted to them. It's more instantaneous, it's more chemical. So that's a major difference, even though 5s are considered to be like a very measured and internalized type. My kind of romantic and crush type behavior compared to Willy's over the years is a little more impulsive and spontaneous and indulgent, even though 4s are generally considered to be more that way than 5s. So I'm wondering if you, Lyndsey and Willy, you can talk about being a social dominant, and I think you both have a social blind partner and what that's like, how your social instinct shows up in those dynamics.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting with Willy, because I'm a 9, so I'm a social 9. Willy's a social 4, and just like I was like, oh, that's exactly how I as well have built relationships with people, right? It's like if I got to get to know them. I'm asking a lot of relational questions and sort of this back and forth, and then I decide whether I like you or not. It's like not this instantaneous, but I think it's really interesting too because he's social sexual, but yet we both still have that approach. I do take longer than him. So it would be and even if I have instant attraction to someone, it's like I'm still a little bit leery of it, and I will kind of watch. So like I'm even thinking of like my earlier relationships and like even like my first longer term partner. Like I have been watching him for a while before I actually started talking to him. And it was like, and then I got to talk to him and I liked him and I liked him and I liked him more, right? But it was really this build up. It's like this build up of like wanting to talk to them, wanting to know more about them, working on building that relationship. And then that sexual instinct for me then gets activated and I'm like really into somebody, but it's sort of this slower process. And I think in the process, like some people, one, don't know whether I'm interested in them or not. I unintentionally have given cues that people think I'm interested in them when I'm not. And so it becomes this, and especially when they're sexual instinct dominant people, it's been like, why aren't you instantly into me? And I'm like, because it takes time. I got to get to know you first to decide whether I'm into you or not. And even if I feel that electrical charge, I don't fully trust it. I think that sexual instinct being that last position, like I need to know that the relationship building and the social dominant stuff can kind of be there. And then I allow the electrical charge to take over. So that's really interesting how you describe that, Sam. I would never do, or nor have I ever done what you're talking about in relationship with someone. What about you, Willy?
Yeah, a lot of this is ringing true for me, and I've never like really had a one night stand because yeah, even if like I can feel that instant attraction, but it's not until I get to know that person that I really know whether I want to move forward. And this may be a social thing, but I've often had the issue too where I've been in my mind deliberately very obviously flirting with someone, and later on they'll be like, I had no clue, I thought you were just being friendly. And conversely, I'll just be friendly with someone, trying to be polite and charming, and they'll think that I was flirting with them the whole time. So it's kind of frustrating. It's like, yeah, my view of my own actions is often at odds with the world. But yeah, my partner is also a 9, and she is self-preservation dominant, and we had to. I mean, we didn't like talk consistently during this time, but we spent about a decade getting to know each other before, we realized that we liked each other. So I think our instincts and types kind of butting up against each other exacerbated that, like long timeline.
So relatable. Willy. I can all the things you just said. I have experienced, and my partner's a self-preservation 5. So luckily, I know how to build that type of relationship because he's self-preservation. But like, yeah, it's been interesting. Like people, I thought that I was giving them very clear cues that I am into you, and they like have no clue. And then people I think I am not giving cues to think that I'm into them.
So not relatable for me, which is so funny. Okay, well, I'm hoping we can go a few minutes over because we started a few minutes late. We do have some listener questions for you, Willy, that people were wanting to ask a real live type 4. The first one is, what does being demisexual mean to you specifically?
Yeah, that is a great question. So for me, it means, not necessarily needing to know someone on an emotional level to feel sexual desire, but a need to be emotionally connected to someone in order to feel the impulse to pursue sex or continuous sex. So, I can be attracted to someone who I don't know that well, but like I need to know them and feel like a certain level of emotional safety and understanding in order to want to engage in, anything more intimate. Yeah.
And we here, for fours who at least know what that word means, a lot of fours are identifying that way as demisexual. A lot of fours are wanting to really feel seen, like their inner world is seen and reflected in order to feel desire.
I
And
think like one of the most attractive things for me is someone like being emotionally intuitive and like getting me, you know?
exactly, yep. That's basically the fours kind of like laundry list of qualities they want to feel sexual desires, to feel like someone gets them. So someone had asked, do fours tend to have a high sex drive? I feel like we already answered that they're in the sexual triad, and yes, they do tend to have a high sex drive. All of the subtypes, but sexual most. But another question for you, Willy. Another type four asked, should we, being fours, try to lower our standard for organic, magical sexual chemistry?
Mm, that's a good question. I am going to stick with the philosophy I hinted at earlier and say absolutely not. We need we need that passion. I think it's our job as fours to I know I often joke with my partner that I'm her like manic pixie dream husband because I'm always trying to like, force whimsy into every situation. I think, it's our job to like create an environment where things like that can naturally flourish. I guess I think sometimes the one thing I will say with fours is I think I know at least for my part I have a tendency to have a very specific idea for what those magical moments look like. So maybe it's not about lowering standards, but sort of expanding our viewpoints for what that can look like. Like it may not be this massive like show-stopping moment. It might be a bit of like magic or intense emotional connection in a smaller moment. So I think just be the advice that I would give would be like to be more to just be open to it. Always have your eyes open to that sort of thing, but don't settle for anything less than the passion that you want to put in the world. Help create an unhinged, passionate, like Heathcliff running down the halls, gothic romance. Yeah.
I want that. Can you teach my four husband to do that? Or five husband? He's not a four. uh,
If
no,
he's
I love what you're saying, right? Because it's not giving up something, but it's maybe reframing it or giving it a different perspective. And how, I mean, how magical is some of that stuff, right? We could bring some old school 18th century romance back into the world. I think it'd be good for all of us.
Mhm.
My follow-up question, this is just from me, but given, that you specifically and a lot of fours are in long-term committed monogamous relationships, how do you reconcile the kind of mundane, everyday stuff that long-term monogamous committed relationships have to deal with this whole passionate kind of fantasy self?
That is a really good question. So one of the things that Sam knows about me is I have in the past experimented with polyamory. So I've kind of for a few years I kind of bounced back and forth between polyamory and monogamy, and I think that there's an idea a lot of people who haven't experienced polyamory have that it's like somehow much more exotic. But I found that a lot of the good and bad things with polyamory are really exactly the same as monogamy. It's just you also have a Google Calendar. It's a lot. It's a lot of scheduling. I think the key is the same to any relationship. I think it's maintaining an emotional connection, finding ways to check in. I think one of the things that being polyamorous for a while taught me that I've brought into my long term committed uh, monogamy is the idea that you've really just got to put it all out there in terms of communication. I think in monogamy, there's a tendency, at least in the West, culturally, to like push a lot of feelings, especially scary ones deep down because we're afraid, this person is like my only shot. Right now, like if I'm afraid of scaring them away, I'm afraid of losing them. But it's only going to breed a healthier relationship if you're honest and open about what you need. So I think maintaining like romance and spontaneity, it's a matter of being honest about what you want, being honest about what you need. I think that any long-term partnership is choosing the other person day after day. So it's also a matter of like every day you're choosing to continue being with this person, so you can also make a choice to tell them how you feel, to like try something new. If you have a certain level of emotional safety within that relationship, then yeah, treat every day like a new adventure and just like try something a little different. I think it's got to be self-guided, but you know the weather is different every day, so can your relationship be too. Yeah.
That was really good advice. Thank you. I think we probably have time for one more quick one. This is really specific, but someone wanted to know, can self-preservation fours be mistyped with fives? And I'll just answer that quick. So, not really, like a little bit, but self-pres fours have the same depth of emotionality that all fours have, the same melancholy, the same moodiness. It's just that externally in the world, they're more oriented toward working, towards the home. So they can look to outside people who don't know them well, a little bit three-ish and maybe a little bit five-ish. They're the fours that tend to be most materially successful, but their partners at home are seeing the same four self, that all of partners of fours are seeing. Um, okay, before we end, Willie, is there anything else you want to share about being a social four and how you approach sex in relationships?
Gosh, that's a good question. I guess I would want to share that I think everything sexual, romantic, is supposed to be fun. And if it becomes stressful, if it feels like it's not serving you anymore, that's the time to like reevaluate. I don't know. I try to balance my like brooding tendencies with a little bit more of an optimistic outlook. So yeah, trying to find that balance. I think there's a difference between fun brooding and like scary, upsetting brooding that kind of like derails your day, and you can't like focus on feeding yourself or or like enjoying the day-to-day stuff. So yeah, I think brooding has a place, but like keep it fun.
And social fours are the best at that. I mean, overall, they're the most optimistic of the subtypes, but they're still fours. So I wouldn't call them an optimist totally, but they are the most optimistic of the subtypes. So that's good to know. Lyndsey, anything else we want to share about our work?
I was just going to say I really appreciated him talking about polyamory and sort of how you do that well. And I think he is giving like that is what I tell clients in my office, right? It's like when you're choosing polyamory or open relationship dynamics, really what you're choosing is the opportunity to manage multiple different relationships at the same time. And you have all the issues with all the partners that you have and sometimes more. And that really it is good communication, transparency, honesty, sharing what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. And social dominants typically do that pretty well because they can be tuned into multiple partners, but sharing that reality of like what that is, because I think people kind of have a fantasy of what polyamory or open relationships look like, and they don't realize what it is until they're in it. And I just think like you really brought a very honest and truthful perspective to that, and like what it looks like and how you manage it. And as I say too, it's like you also have some growth because you're like, I can sit in the brooding, but you recognize, and that's like the challenge of the four, which I just love just seeing in him too, which is that I can't just sit in the melancholic brooding kind of darker emotions, that actually it's about the embracing of the light emotions too. And like he shared that, like knowing that you have to embrace the light as well, and that it is about both perspectives and angles, and that's the growth point of the four. So that was just really excellent to kind of hear that he knows how to embrace that as well.
Well, I guess that is it for us. We're over time, and this went super fast as always. If you have more type 4 questions, DM them to me or Lyndsey. We'll pass them along to Willy, and I'm sure he'd be happy to answer some more. And we're so super happy to have you. Thank you for being here.
And then next month is our type 3s. And we have a self-preservation 3 coming in to talk about sex and the Enneagram as well. And so we're super excited about that, and we'll keep you posted. I think Sam won't be there at this one, so we'll miss her greatly. She's going on a vacation, and she's going to be having some fun in Australia, right? Yeah, so she'll get to be, so it'll just be me and our special guest next month, but we look forward to seeing you again. She will get to be here for our 2s and our 1s. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to Sam or I with any questions. Thank you so much, Willy, for being here today, and have a wonderful Friday. See you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.